Hello and welcome to Bell Peppers and Beef, a Cowboy Bebop podcast. This week we're talking about Session 16, Dog Serenade. I'm Paul.
David.
And Justin.
Alright, Dave, what happened in this episode?
Well, it turns out that a police carrier got stolen by all the inmates. Jet meets up with his old partner and discovers that one of the inmates just happens to be the guy that he happened to lose his arm to. So, Jet's got some business in this episode.
Yeah, it's mainly a Jet episode. Again.
Yeah.
And of course, you kind of know business is kind of going to go on when you open up with a scene with all the policemen dead and the cell door trying to close. But sadly, there's something in the way. But sadly, we all know what the thing is in the way.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful shot. Like, just the way it's constructed and the colors. You're looking at me like I'm a freak, but it is a beautifully constructed shot.
Nah, not so much me. The next scene, though, I'd probably look, depending on how you thought about it.
Which one are you talking about?
Well, one of the inmates steps out of the cell and meets up with our specific villain by the name of Odai.
Odai? Is that his name?
I believe so. It's what I have written down.
Alright.
But anywho, the inmate having a bottle of wine and taking a swig gives it to Odai, with Odai simply spilling it out.
Right into one of the dead guy's mouths.
I mean, that looks good too. I just think the opening shot, it's a really great visual that really grabs the audience, and it looks really cool.
Yeah.
You just know that's just going to be that type of episode this time.
Yeah, sugar.
Alrighty, so what happens after that, Dave?
I think after that we move back to the Bebop, where there's always particular troubles, and Faye's usually the one to bring it up. So, having a discussion with Jet on things, he seems to be a bit more lost in thought from trimming his bonsais, where Faye decides to bring up the discussion of Jet's arm.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Jet's arm. So, we get a flashback later in the episode that shows how he thinks he lost his arm. Which is getting shot by Udai.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow one bullet cost him his arm.
It probably was something a bit more powerful than a bullet.
Or one shot.
Yeah.
I guess if it's like a laser gun or something, I guess that's possible.
No, it wasn't really specific what kind of gun. It could have been like a really powerful sniper of sorts. I don't know.
Yeah, but, I mean, that's fair. I don't know. It just seemed weird to me. I guess I was hoping it was going to be something a little more...
True.
Traumatic.
Like an explosion or something?
I would have actually gone darker than that, but that's just me, so...
Okay.
Cause
like, Vicious with a sword slicing his limb off?
Some closer to that, yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't have had it be Vicious, because that would have been just a little too convenient.
Well, I thought of anyone within the series so far that used more of a close combat weapon, and Vicious was kind of the only one I had in mind.
Well, there is another one later, but...
My idea would have just been, we know Jet was a cop.
Blech.
So, just have him have, an undercover mission, he gets discovered, and somebody cuts his arm off.
Blech.
But do it in a more traumatic way than just getting shot. Have it get cut off with, a fucking bandsaw or something.
Yeah. But then, of course, there's also the question that you brought up in other episodes. With the technology that is nowadays, Jet doesn't exactly need the arm he has, with it being more of a metal cybernetic arm. He could easily just get himself a new, more human arm. But with what Jet says, that arm is his arm. He doesn't need instructions with explaining to Faye.
Though, I think it's not the fact that he gets his arm shot off or whatever. It's more of the fact that apparently he was set up in that circumstance.
Yeah, we find out that it's his partner who actually shot him, which, I mean, that's an interesting twist. And I kind of like it, but on the other hand, it seems like it's just all too, conveniently tied up in the end. I don't know. I don't mind the idea of having that twist and the betrayal, and that being a motivation for Jet. My problem, I don't know. it's fine. It's just, I think it could have been handled better.
But as it sort of sat with Jet and his old partner, it definitely seemed like they were together for long enough and sort of had that sort of decent partner relationship in those sorts of respects. But the simple fact that the partner was part of the organization Uday was under, he knew the score, and he understood the road that Jet was going down. If he didn't do something, Jet was gonna die, no matter what. So he supposedly took the step to push Jet into a safer sort of path, despite the consequences of what happened for that action. As in with what happens on the convict ship when Jet and his partner get there to take down all the prisoners.
Yeah. Okay, so let's fast forward to that part.
Where Jet also leaves his bonsai trees to Edward for
Edward.
whatever reason.
Which is a terrible idea.
Yeah, he probably... Jet needs to come back.
And then Edward floods the room while she's wandering. God,
she uses the hose and just kind of just sprays it everywhere.
At least Ide seems to be enjoying himself.
It didn't really look like he was enjoying himself. I don't know.
Nah.
Can we just kick Edward out of the ship?
Just not yet.
Rolling out into space.
No.
I don't think in those sorts of respect, no.
God damn.
But not as it is. Jet definitely puts up somewhat of a decent fight against Uday, though Uday has all the martial artist sort of fighting moves against him. But then Uday decides to reveal to Jet that his partner was the one that did all the particular things. Of course, until he gets shot in the head by Jet's said partner.
Where apparently he only loaded his gun with one bullet, knowing exactly what he's going to use it for, supposedly.
Nah.
Yeah, okay, so we find out that Jet's partner is the one who betrayed him. And his partner ends up getting shot and is about to die.
No.
I made a note that this show does one thing really, really well. And I'm actually going to give the show a compliment. Which I don't do a lot sometimes.
Oh, most sure, certainly.
So I made the note twice in this episode that this show is so good at making violence beautiful. Because every time there's a fight scene, or like I think back to episode 5 where we had the shot with Spike and Vicious each holding a weapon to each other. They do such a good job of making that violent imagery beautiful. The problem comes down to some of the other storytelling, at least for me. But I do really love that about the show. Anyway, continue on.
Well, it turns out, it is true that Jet's partner only had one bullet, but I think my particular question was, did he not have the bullet set to shoot, or what the case was with it? Because we saw earlier in the episode he put in the one bullet and gave it a spin Russian roulette style.
Yeah, but still, he already used his bullet on...
Yeah, he must have had a second gun. Or something. That's the only way that works.
I think with any sort of style of gun like that, the casing would stay inside of the round after it was shot. So it might have been the case that that one bullet was the one he shot into Uday's head.
I think that's how it works.
But the second and all the rest of the barrels were empty. But his partner did it in such a way that he threatened to shoot, so he made Jet shoot him.
I think that's how that worked.
Then,
I guess.
Like, the casing didn't come out of the revolver, obviously.
Yeah, because he's using like a super old like style revolver.
Yeah.
No?
Which is another thing I don't get about the technology in this show.
Yeah.
Somehow, the gun technology hasn't evolved past 1998, but they've got spaceships.
Yeah. For some reason. I mean, sometimes they have lasers, too.
Yeah, but it seems like that's really, like, sporadic. Like, it's either you've got a 9mm Glock, or you've got a laser gun. And there's nothing in between.
Some people still like, I don't know, using an old style weapon. I don't know why.
Yeah, but Yeah, but Justin, if you were a bounty hunter in the modern world, and you had the choice between an 1800s revolver or an AK-47, which one are you gonna take?
Not the revolver.
Right? You take the more powerful weapon.
Unless you're Revolver Ocelot from Metal Gear Solid, then...
But that, of course, is a different story entirely.
That's different.
I just... Okay. Anything else to add, Dave?
The episode was definitely dark for all the particular stuff it does, but dark does not mean bad. It's definitely good for everything that Bebop tried to accomplish thus far with it. And on the whole, it's bittersweet, but it's something to sort of flesh out Jet more, which is always a good thing.
Alrighty, Justin.
It's a nice little dark episode. Not nice. I mean, it was pretty bloody.
Okay.
Not even the Ed moments could lighten it up.
Not really.
I wish the Ed moments were out of this. But anyway, this show, in my opinion, is at its best when it's being serious. Not when it has Edward.
No.
What if Edward was serious, then what would happen?
It would possibly either be the greatest thing in the world to Paul, or everything would most likely self-implode upon itself.
I would hate it. I can't stand that character. Anyway, the show is at its best when it's serious. This is one of the better episodes we've gotten, in my opinion. I prefer the darker tone. I don't like... I think the major criticism I have of Edward is a character in the wrong show.
Edward does actually belong on the Bebop for her own reasons. But you don't know yet why, I guess.
That's entirely fair, but I still think Edward is a character in the wrong show. Edward is such a heavily comedic character in a show that... Maybe my problem isn't even with Edward, maybe it's with the tone of the show. Because it doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. Because sometimes it wants to do an episode like this, which is quite dark, but then the next week it wants to play in comedy.
Yeah, which is what is going to be the next episode anyways.
But I think the problem I have is not necessarily that it wants to switch genres, because I can handle that in shows. For Buffy is an example of that, where it switches genres episode to episode. I think the problem I have is... So, I think the problem I have with this is I'll use the episode Toys in the Attic as an example. Okay. So this is an episode that is built on being a horror story from minute 1 until the last 2 minutes when it wants to switch to being a comedy. It doesn't maintain the right tone. I think that's my biggest problem with the show is its inconsistency.
Yeah, but Toys in the Attic wasn't exactly meant to be a serious episode in the first place.
But they're okay. So they're presenting it as a horror story. It's like I said in that episode when we talked about it. It's like if you watched Alien and in the last 2 minutes they revealed that Alien was a Chihuahua.
But Toys in the Attic is more like the Spaceballs of Alien.
Okay, but if you want to do that, make it funny. Like, this is my inherent problem with it. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too.
Right, yeah. Okay, fine.
No.
We're never going to agree on this.
Yeah.
Okay. So, David, do you have a rating for this episode?
As it sits with me with this one, it definitely sits in kind of the higher echelon of things. Keeping the point serious of stuff, but still, on the whole, being good for what it sort of does. So as it sits with me, it's a good episode. You just gotta be ready for all the darker tones it starts to dive into.
Justin?
Honestly, this one isn't not one of my higher up episodes on my scale. I didn't really care for this one as much for just my own reason, I guess. I mean, I do like that it was a little bit darker of an episode and had, a bit more storytelling with Jet and all that. I find that the show does its best in other areas, oddly enough. That's like my take on it.
Alright, well, fair enough. So, I quite like this episode. For me, it's probably a 7.5 out of 10. I think that the show is at its best, like you said, when it takes a darker tone, when it tries to be less of a comedy. I think this is quite a good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Last minute thoughts, either of you?
Man, that neck slice, though.
What?
Odai sliced one of the prisoners' necks after a certain point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a nice little, not really a nice gesture.
No, murder is usually not considered a nice gesture, Justin.
A nice, not nice gesture.
Of course, the other prisoner decided to murder the pilots and whatnot of the ship.
Yeah, the last hostage that they had.
Alrighty, I think that's it for this week. I'm Paul.
David.
And me, Justin.